you can, or for those that may not be able to join us. So it will be recorded. And just to introduce myself, in case you've never been on one of our calls, my name is Kayla Bodie. I'm the program manager here for the background check unit with the Division of Child Care. And I'm going to put my contact information in the chat box. And on the call, I do know that I see Brenda Burr, who's our program coordinator here with the background check unit. I also see Cynthia Smith, and she is also here with the background check unit. I think that's all from our team. And then, let's see, I think we do have a couple of our licensing team members on the call as well. So anyone who wants to put their contact information here from the division in the chat box, you're more than welcome to do so. All right, so let's get started. Today we're going to talk about background checks. We are going to go through the entire background check process. We're going to talk about some updates to the background check process, where to go to find corrected forms, where to get those questions answered, and anything else that you may need. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will stop periodically and just ask if you have questions. Feel free to unmute yourself if you feel comfortable doing that as well. If you don't, you can always email or call us, any of the contact information on the chat, and we will be happy to help. So it's a small group. Feel free to chime in, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. So background checks are a requirement for children to be safe, and that's why we do these. So you do see Act 572, which was enacted in 2017. It also requires them to have a federal background check. So if you've been in child care since before 2017, that is something that we used to only do the state check. We used to not do the FBI check. So that's something that's a little new for some people. I think now everyone is fairly used to that, but anyone who's been in childcare in Arkansas for a significant amount of time might remember when that was new. So we're going to go over a couple of important updates. And the first and biggest update is, if you have submitted background checks, you know that there is a consent form. That consent form is notarized, and then it is uploaded to the INA system when you're submitting an applicant. So as of today, the notary section is no longer a requirement on those forms. So now when you are submitting an applicant and you go to the link to request a background check and you're putting in their information, when you get that, they will only have to sign. There is no longer a notary requirement. So we are really excited about that. It's going to be really helpful for providers to not have to go and get a notary. It's going to be really helpful for us as well, because that's a lot of the errors that we see, and it causes not approvals a lot of times. So we're really excited about that. The link doesn't change. Nothing changes on where you're getting that form. But now when you go in to do it, you will notice when it gets to the email, it's only going to be 2 pages instead of 3. And if you have any issues, please reach out, let me know. But we've been testing it today. Everything looks good. So that's a really exciting update. And then we just want to kind of talk about some reminders around the background check process. Potential employees that have lived out of state in the last 5 years, they must have background checks from those states. If it's not completed, it can cause a delay or even a not approval. If you have specific questions about a state, and we're going to talk a little more in depth about the out-of-state process and where to find that information, but if you are stuck or you have questions, just give us a call. We will, go through the process with you and explain what you need to do. If there's a question, if we don't know, we will find the answer. So just so you know that if they lived out of state in the last 5 years, they are going to have to do that. Then the next reminder is just about the child maltreatment check. So those do expire every 2 years. If your applicant is expiring, you need to go ahead and submit that through the central registry. It's a separate check. We'll talk about that as well. But just remember that some of those are probably coming up on their 2-year expiration. And your criminal and federal may not, but your maltreatment may. So that's the separate portal you go into, the $10 that you pay, and you get that check typically the same business day. So just kind of reminder about that. I know it should be coming up on 2 years for a lot of those of you who started this new online process in 2021. So. And then just another reminder that if you do not complete all of the components of the background check within 45 days, your application will be moved to a not approved status. So this does not apply if we're waiting on some out-of-state results. There are some other instances, but if you have not submitted for out-of-state, or you have not submitted your maltreatment for Arkansas, or they have not gotten fingerprints done, if it's been over 45 days, you're going to get a not approval. We have to have all of those components completed, and the out-of-state has to have at least been requested in order for us to be in compliant with our federal partners. So that 45-day process is something that we have to follow. So if you're scheduling, a new applicant to go get fingerprinted, I would do it as soon as possible. And if they don't go to that appointment, if they don't get fingerprinted, that's going to result in a not approval. That's a part of the process that does have to be completed. Does anyone have any questions about those updates or about the new notary, not notary form, the new missing notary form? Anyone have any questions about what we just kind of went over in updates before we get started on the process? All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, and we're going to talk about who needs a background check. So your child maltreatment portion of the background check, all staff, your janitors, your therapists, your volunteers, and your student observers are going to need. When you get to the criminal and the FBI part of your background check, all of your staff, your janitors, your therapists, anyone who is going to have that unsupervised access to children is going to need all three. If you are going to have a one-time volunteer or maybe a one-time student observer, those are kind of in a gray area depending on how often they're going to be at your facility. They definitely need the child maltreatment to be done, but they may not need the criminal and FBI, and I always recommend reach out to your licensing specialist and ask. Let them know what their duties are going to be in the facility, and they will work with you and determine if they need that. So even if they are transportation staff, if they are unsupervised, if they're counting in ratio or have any type of staff roles with children, they do need a background check. Any questions about who needs a check? Okay, so when do background checks expire? Your federal and your state, which is also called the criminal a lot of the time, those both expire after 5 years. Your child maltreatment expires after 2 years. Any questions about that so far? Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about disqualifying offenses. And this section can get a little confusing. There's a lot of legal terminology. When you go into your licensing requirement book, you're going to be looking under section 110. And I cannot remember what the page number is, but if you look, there's a long table, a very long list of disqualifying offenses. And depending on the severity of the charge and how long it's been, they may or may not be eligible. So, for example, none of these people, no person is going to be eligible if they are on, let's say, resisting arrest and it was a misdemeanor. We go back 5 years to make that determination. So if it was, on, let's say, August of 2011, it was a misdemeanor, resisting arrest, they may be eligible. There is a small caveat to that. They cannot have any more offenses in the last 5 years from the date of the background check. So 2011, you have a misdemeanor, resisting arrest, and you did nothing else. So from today going back 5 years, nothing else has happened. Regardless if it's on the list or not, then you would be eligible to work. If you had that misdemeanor and it was in 2011, and then in 2020, you had a DUI, which is not on our list of disqualifying offenses, you would not be eligible. So there are some very specific parameters that we have to look at when we're basing our determinations. I always recommend to look at this list. It's really long. We've got a couple of examples here, but you'll see that in your licensing standards. And when you are working with your applicants, let them know, let them look at the list and say, if you have a misdemeanor or you have a felony, it's going to be 5 years for misdemeanors, 10 years from felonies. Just be honest, because it is going to show up, whether it's sealed, whether it's expunged, or whether it's pardoned. We're going to see it, and we do not want there to be any surprises. You don't want any surprises, and so it's just more helpful to kind of have that open communication. Now, these are disqualifying offenses. You'll also see under section 110 at the very end, there are about 7 waiverable offenses. And so there's just a very small little amount there. I think theft by receiving is one. So you'll notice your theft of property, your shoplifting, those are not waiverable offenses, but theft by receiving is. So those are all things you'll find in your licensing regulations. And then, of course, you're going to see your permanently prohibited offenses. So these offenses are, whether they're a misdemeanor, whether they're a felony, most of these are going to be felony, but whether or not they're misdemeanor or felony, these are offenses that are prohibited, they're ineligible. It does not matter how long it has been. Obviously, these are going to be your serious offenses like sexual assault, murder, arson, kidnapping, endangering the welfare of an incompetent person. So those types of things, it does not matter if it was a felony and it's been 20 years, you're still not going to be eligible to work in childcare. And you will see those on the same section of 110 in that table. It'll be the very top part. So just kind of, we like to give you a little bit of an example of what we're looking for so that you're aware when you have staff that are applying and maybe they come in and tell you, I had this offense or I had, this happen. And this is exactly what we're referring to when we look at the disqualifying offenses. So any question about those 2 lists in your licensing regulations? And I don't see, okay, Brenda answered about the page numbers. I don't see any questions, so we're going to move on. So we're going to talk about the background check system. All licensed programs must use the online background check system. We no longer accept any paper applications. So you'll see it called a few things. You might see it called INA, NICAR, and you may just hear us call it the online background check system. So it's been bought a couple of times by different companies, and the name may change, but it's the electronic background check system. So when you're running an applicant through this online system, it includes your state criminal background check, which includes a state sex offender check. And then you will have your federal criminal background check, which is where your applicant gets fingerprinted. And that is going to include a national sex offender registry check. So there's several things that are going to be checked when you submit an applicant into the system. And then you'll see here that we have the subscription link for how to sign up for an INA account, your background check account. And then, of course, you will have to submit a separate child maltreatment registry check. This is done through the central registry, and we've got that linked there as well. And we'll have another page with some additional information in just a little bit. Any questions about those points? Okay, so let's go through the background check process. Once you have gained access to your account, you are going to go onto the request for criminal background check. This is also known as the consent form. So if you call and we're talking to you about the consent form, this is the same thing. We've got the link here at the bottom. It's also linked on our website. So if you put your email in the chat, when I send this to you, all these links will be workable off the PDF for you. So you can bookmark those for future use. You're going to be sure and select childcare unless you're a child welfare agency. If so, you probably would have been on our call from yesterday. We did a training with them, but make sure you select childcare. It's going to pop up a little box and ask you for your license number and then your facility name. You're going to complete the rest of this information for your applicant. And then you're going to go on and click submit. And whatever email you put in is where your consent form is going to go. So when you get the email, it's going to look something like this, which, like we just talked about, this second page right here, this one is going, well, it's not going, it has gone away. It is no longer there. So you will have 2 pages now, and this just went into effect today. So if you submit an applicant from about 11:30 from today going forward, you'll have 2 pages. It's going to be the first page with the applicant's demographic information, so their name, driver's license, everything you just put in. And then page 2 is going to have the Challenge and Privacy Act information for the applicant, and they will need to sign and date that. And this is your completed consent form. So any questions on getting that form completed? Okay, now that you've got your form completed, you're going to log into your account as the provider. We've got this updated screenshot here for you when you log in. I don't know if any of you have had any problems or if you noticed, but they added a little acknowledgement statement, so you have to click that box before you log in. Once you're logged into your account, you will click on the search tab at the top. And here you're going to enter your applicant's information. So it's going to be a lot of the same information you just did on the consent form. You are going to have to put in the purpose, which if you have multiple drop downs, some of you may also have DDS providers, or you may also be, if you're a school district, you may have an EDC option. So make sure that you are selecting the child care, the CHI option. It's going to ask you to attach your signed consent document, which you just got done. You just got that signed, so you'll attach it here. And then you're going to enter some FBI information. I always just say a little tip is have a copy of their driver's license right there in front of you when you're doing this process. That's going to help you because here on the FBI information, it's going to ask for the information. A lot of it's going to be directly from their driver's license. You can also verify that the driver's license name and date of birth matches what they put on the consent form and what you're typing in here. Once you click submit, it's going to ask you to review your work. So this is a very critical time to just take a few minutes, look over the name, look over the date of birth, make sure that it matches their state issued ID or their passport, whatever they're using for identification. If you see an error, you can go back, but double check this information. So a lot of times we will see like an incorrect date of birth here. Maybe you were meaning to type 1970, but you typed 1971. If you make that error and you submit, they will not be able to get fingerprinted. And so Arkansas State Police does not reimburse for data entry error. So you'll have to pay again and resubmit all over again and get a new transaction number. So that's why we say take your time, verify. I know sometimes when you're typing in dates, sometimes your computer can auto-populate dates, and Just look over that carefully before you submit. You will get your transaction number, which should start with a CHI. And if you'll notice, your search ID number and your transaction number are one and the same. You're just adding that CHI childcare prefix. Then there's 2 zeros. And so in this example, search ID 3708945. The transaction number is CHI 00 and then the 3708945. So if for any reason you don't get this confirmation with your transaction, you can always go under your history tab and see your search ID number, and those are one and the same. So any questions on the completing of the request and getting your transaction ID? Okay, we'll move on to fingerprints. So you've completed your submission and now your applicant just needs to get fingerprinted. So we have the link here on the page and you will select make an appointment and then fingerprinting. And this part is fairly simple. We just want to remind everyone that they will have to take their state issued ID or passport when they get fingerprinted to verify identity. Make sure they have that with them when they go. The fingerprint scheduler is going to ask you to select a location. You can select the DHS county location that is nearest to the applicant. It does not have to be the county that you're in. So for example, I live in Garland County. I work in Pulaski County. I don't have to get fingerprinted in Pulaski County. I could get fingerprinted in Garland County. Sometimes we have questions about that. It does not matter which office you go to. You can pick whatever option works best for you. And you'll select your time and your date. And then you're going to fill out the applicant's information here. So their name, their email, and phone number. And you can select or receive text message reminders. And then here you'll enter the transaction ID. So I just want to note also that I really recommend to put in the applicant's email and phone number. I know that sometimes as a director or human resource manager, you may want to put in your email address here to get that confirmation. If you do that and you submit multiple people at a time, you will stop getting scheduled. You won't be able to schedule fingerprints. You'll stop getting the availability to do that. But the system thinks that you're the same person scheduling over and over again. So just make sure that you're using the applicant's email. If they don't have one, you could create one for them. You could use yours, but if you do 2 or 3 in the same day, you may have some issues there. And then another tip is you will see here where it says E number. That is directly correlated to an FBI rejection. And we are going to talk about that here in just a little bit. We're going to go over the rejection process. But just so that you can see, that is where you will put in that E number. And it shows you the format of how to enter that data there. So any questions on scheduling fingerprints? Okay. So the last step of your background check process is to submit the Arkansas Child Maltreatment Registry check. So your applicant will need to list 5 years of residency here. And this is pretty simple. I've got the central registry information here. We don't process these, we do view them. But if you're having any issues, please reach out to them. Just be sure that when you're submitting this, you are selecting the second option. A lot of times you may read that very first one that says you're a teacher, pre-service, or work for a school in Arkansas. And your staff are teachers and they do work for a school in Arkansas, but that is directly correlated for the Department of Education. So make sure you're selecting the second option that says you are a potential or current employee of a child care facility or residential facility for children and youth licensed by Arkansas Department of Human Services. As most of you know, we are going to be moving under the Department of Education, but for right now, until that happens, continue selecting that second option. That way we have access to your results and it'll streamline this whole process. Otherwise, you'll be emailing us copies of every one that you submit. So go ahead and select that second option before you submit everything in. And then we've got the link to their website here as well. And then, like I said, their phone number and their email. So if you get stuck anywhere or you don't get your result, I would say within 24 business hours, reach out to them. They are very, very quick at getting those results back. Sometimes it's as quick as 30 minutes to an hour. Sometimes by the end of the business day, I rarely see them take any longer than 24 business hours. If you submit late on a Friday, it'll be Monday, probably morning, but they are very fast. Any questions on child maltreatment checks? Okay, so we're going to go back and talk about the fingerprints being rejected. And we haven't really gone in depth about this a lot, but we've had pretty significant delays over the last couple of months with rejected fingerprints. So I want to take some time and just explain where you can see that fingerprints have been rejected and what the process should be. If you log into your INA account and you're looking under your history tab to see, let's just say Sally Smith's status, and you notice that Sally here has an FBI rejected status. That means that the federal government has rejected those prints because they are not legible. It can be because their fingerprints were smudged when they were rolled. It could also be that their fingerprints are just not legible, and that's okay. There's a process in place. So the first thing that you're going to do is click on View Attached Documents, and you'll see that to the right. It's a link. When you click on that, you are going to download the rejection letter. It should be attached there. If it is not attached, give us a call. Should be attached there. And then you can print a copy of this letter. I've got a screenshot of a similar one here as well. And you will notice that in the letter, there will be a corresponding E number. And I've got it blacked out for privacy purposes, but it'll say, like I've got an example here on the Smith, Sally Smith, she's got her transaction number, and then it'll have this long E number. It'll look just like that in the letter. This is what you're going to use to schedule a second fingerprint. The FBI will allow us to do a name-based search only when there have been 2 rejections on the same transaction. So you'll go in, you'll schedule another session of fingerprinting for Sally Smith. You'll put in her same transaction number and the E number from your letter from state police. And then go ahead and print a copy for Sally to take to her second appointment. And then the next important and last step is when we receive the results from state police, which will take a little bit more time, we do receive those by mail, they're not electronic, we will update the overall status. So Sally's status would go from provisional to approved. However, you will still see that the FBI was rejected initially. That status won't change in the system. It may over the next couple of years as we update our online system. I'm sure we will advance those changes, but currently it'll still say FBI rejected. The main focus that you'll want to look at is your overall status. That is what matters. That's what your licensing specialist is going to be looking for. That is what is going to keep you in compliance. So I know sometimes people are confused because it doesn't change to complete. It still says rejected. As long as it says overall approved, then you are ready to go. So do we have any questions about fingerprints rejected or the process? And I do see there was a question in the chat regarding the INA setup for the account. Yes, and so Brenda put the number in there for you. If you have your INA and you need to get your username, let's see. Yeah, if you're just needing to get your username or reset your account or get your password reset, call that subscription account number and they'll be able to help you. They're kind of a help desk for the IT part of things. we don't have access to your username and password or your payment information, anything like that. So they can get you worked out on that. And if for any reason you're not able to get help there, Sylvia, if you will call me, my number's there at the top in the chat box. You can give me a call and let me know, and I'll make sure and find someone that can get your login information taken care of for you. And if that's not what you were asking, feel free to let us know. Okay, any other questions about fingerprint rejects? Okay. So there are some special conditions, and we talked about the Department of Education a little bit. One of those special conditions are school districts, and we hope to see a change for this in the future. But right now, if you're a school district with a preschool ABC program, you are licensed under the Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. So your staff have to be ran through the Department of Ed under the EDU or EDC prefix. Then, because you're licensed by the Department of Human Services, you also are having to submit that applicant under the child care option, which is the CHI option. So for your staff that work in a preschool program, they are having to do 2 sets of fingerprints, 2 maltreatments. They do everything twice, just under 2 different options. And it's just simply because of the way the state law is written and because of the disqualifying offenses, the way that it's written. And it's something that we're working on. We really want to get that changed so that you don't have to do that twice. And we are working really hard on it. And now that we will be a part of the Department of Education, I think that's going to be a #1 top priority for us. And so hopefully that will change, but currently just want you to be aware. And the same goes for some DDS providers. So there are some of our providers that are EIDT providers, or maybe they provide a Medicaid side of things. So they will also be doing the same, where they are running background checks under not only their child care option, but maybe their DDS option. And if we have anybody on the call today that has 2 different licenses, maybe dual license, or maybe you're just not sure the type of program that you are, you can always reach out to us and we'll help kind of walk you through that. Okay, so we're gonna now talk about the out-of-state process. So in the beginning, we said that anyone who has lived out of the state of Arkansas in the last 5 years is required to conduct a background check out of state or wherever they've lived. So if they lived in Texas last year and Montana the year before that, they're going to have to run background checks in both of those states, wherever they've lived in the last 5 years. And when we say they have to have a background check, that means they have to meet the same requirements. So a criminal background check, a child maltreatment, and a sex offender registry. Now, there are some very specific circumstances around each state. We have an interstate child care background check contact list that the Office of Child Care provides. And this list has several different states, and you'll notice that some of them are in red. If you click that link, you can see the whole list, but some of them are in red, and there's an asterisk that says NFF state. So you may be wondering, well, what does that mean? An NFF state is a national fingerprint file state. They report to the same FBI requests that we do. So we see them on our criminal. Basically, it means you do not need to do a criminal background check in those states. So looking at this example, if they lived in Colorado, they don't need a criminal background check, so they would only need child maltreatment and sex offender registry checks. If you're looking at the same list and you see where DC is on here, if they lived in DC, they have to do all 3, criminal, child, and sex offender checks. And that can be really overwhelming when you're looking at this list of states. About half of the states only require the maltreatment and sex offender, and the other half require the criminal to also be added to that. We've tried to make it fairly simple. So what we've done is we've created a portion of our website where you can select the state. So if you click the link that there is in the middle of the page, you can select your state. And when that you go to the drop-down menu, it's going to tell you what you need to run for that state, the website, and the instructions. And you'll also notice there's a couple of special conditions for there's 4 states. Tennessee and Oklahoma, we will run those ourselves. They are very simple. They're an online search that we can do. So we will do those immediately here. You do not need to do anything for those 2 states. California is a closed record state. So even though we would like to get records from them, they do not release records. So you do not need to do anything from California. We will perform a sex offender registry search, and that's the only thing that we will get from them. And then Arizona, they also will not release criminal records. And so you will only get a child abuse and neglect result. And again, to try and simplify it the best that we can, we have a link there in the middle of the page. If you go there, select the state that you need. So if your applicant lived in Texas, you'll select Texas, and it's going to tell you exactly what you need to do. And then sometimes we get the question, what about someone who's lived out of the country in the last 5 years? You do not need to do anything for out of country residents. You'll still want to have them list those addresses to make up that 5 years, but you don't need to do any request for those. Any questions on out of state request or where to find the information? Okay, let's move on. So now that you have decided you're going to move forward with this applicant, you know you need to do Texas out of state, where do I send the results? Once you've requested the information from the other state, or if the instructions tell you that you're going to send the form to our team and we're going to make the request, we will send that email on. Otherwise, if you make the request and you get a confirmation email, or maybe you submit those results by mail, if you can make a copy of that confirmation and you will submit it to us, then we can make a determination within 45 business days. The reason why we're doing this is because there, for example, I will use Texas again. Their child abuse and neglect results, if you email them, they're currently about 120 days behind on getting results back. We're not going to have you wait 120 days before that person can be in an approved status. So we have worked with our federal partners and we have created a policy that we can go ahead and make a determination based on everything else we have. Texas is one of those states where you'll have to do all 3. So we will do you will do the criminal and the sex offender, and you can request the maltreatment. And once you've done that, we will check and make sure the criminal and the sex offender are clear, and then we can make a determination. So we can approve that person. If something comes back in 120 days that's a negative result, of course, we will have to take action at that point, but we can go ahead and make that determination. So anytime you have out of state, save that confirmation that you send. If it's through an online portal, you can take a screenshot. If it's something that we will send in for you, because every state's different, then we will notate that. Otherwise, you'll just send the results to either our email address, which is here on the page, or you can mail it to us also, of course. We have that dedicated mailbox, the background check at dhs.arkansas.gov. That's for all things out of state. And so if you have questions or you're not sure on what steps you need to take for that state after you've kind of reviewed our website, reach out to us, send us an email. We'll be happy to kind of help walk you through it, because it can get confusing, especially if they need multiple states or if it's a state that requires multiple steps. So Any questions on submitting for out of state? Okay. So now we're going to talk about the overall status and what that means. So we've got a screenshot here, and yours may look a little different than our screenshots for our training purposes, but for the most part, you're going to have your search ID, the name of your facility, your applicant's name, and then at the bottom right-hand side, you should see an overall status. Now, you've got 4 different options. So it could be pending. This just means that the regulatory check is in process and the applicant cannot begin working. So they may not begin at all if they are in pending. Once they move to provisional, you can hire the applicant. They just cannot be left alone with children. So if you want to hire someone and they're in provisional and you want to put them in the classroom, you know, with another teacher that's approved, that's fine. They cannot be left alone with children. So provisional really just means that the state portion of the check has been completed, but something is missing. So it could be that their fingerprints are still pending and that means they haven't gotten fingerprinted. It could be that you need to submit your child maltreatment for Arkansas. It could be that you're waiting on some out of state results or you're doing that process. Or it could be that the applicant needs to send us additional documentation. So if we've sent them a letter and we've asked for some things for them to clarify on our end, we will leave them in that provisional status while we're making a determination. Of course, approved means all components have been completed. They're ready to work without any restriction. And then they will be not approved if they are not eligible to work in childcare, or there is an error on the consent form, which hopefully now we will have much less of because there's no notary requirement. And then it could also be because maybe the applicant did not complete a portion of the check in 45 days. So if they did not go get fingerprinted and you're still seeing that fingerprint pending status, and it's been over 45 days, you'll get a non-approval because they have to complete that part of the check. It's not done until they actually go and get fingerprints taken. If you get a non-approval and you're not sure why, if you are not sure if it's because of documentation error or, you know, if it happened really fast. So if you submitted someone today and you get a non-approval tomorrow, it's 100% some sort of a data error, either on the consent or within the system. We give every person due process that has a criminal finding that may be a disqualifying offense. So we're going to send them a letter. We're going to give them due process of at least 10 business days before we move them to not approved. We're also going to notify your licensing specialist, so they will be reaching out to you to let you know that Sally Smith cannot work in childcare. So you'll be notified if it is due to their background check. Otherwise, if you get that not approved, you know, like I said, you submit today, you get not approved tomorrow, reach out to us because there's a high likely chance that it is a simple data error that we can help you fix. Does anyone have any questions about your overall status or where to find your overall status? So I know that this isn't necessarily on the slide, but sometimes we get this question. When you're looking at the screenshot in the top right-hand corner of this slide, you'll see there is a view button. And I believe on your end, you have a print button there. When you select that print button, it's not going to do anything. That button is not functional. It does not print anything for you. If you want to print a copy of this to put in your employee files for your licensing specialist to come in and view, you will just print this entire page. So the best way to do that is right click anywhere on the screen and just print the whole page. We hope in the future that we will have that letter option that'll just generate a nice little letter for you to print. But currently that option does not, it doesn't do anything. So if you click it, you'll just get an error. Any questions before we move on to the last couple of slides? Okay. So here are just some things that we can't stress enough from our team. So again, staff may not begin to work until the state criminal check has been done. And this means your overall status will be provisional. It'll no longer be pending. They must be supervised by an approved staff member. So if you need to see the status of your applicant, you can log into your account. This is where you will see all of those status updates. Make sure all of your information is correct before submitting. The applicant's name and date of birth must match their state issued ID or passport. And then notify the background check unit if a staff is no longer employed and they are in a provisional status. So if you've been waiting for Sally Smith to go get fingerprinted and she hasn't done it yet, and then you fire her, reach out and let us know. What that does is it allows us to put them in a not approved status, and then we can kind of take them out of our queue. Otherwise, we're constantly checking on Sally Smith and she's no longer working at your facility. So you can send us a quick email and just say no longer employed and put the search ID number. And I mean, you don't have to give us any other information. And then that also kind of goes into the last point is when you're emailing the background check unit, please include the search ID number. That will help us find the correct applicant quickly and efficiently. So sometimes the spelling of the name can be off, or there can be multiple people with the same name. So if you have a search ID number, that's really helpful to put in the email for us. And so we're just going to talk about some possible delays in the process. And you can see that really for a pending delay, the only thing that really should keep them in pending is if we're asking for additional information because of their state check. If they're in pending for more than, I would say, 24 to 48 business hours, give us a call and we'll take a look at it and let you know. It may be something on our end, but we really try to get those to at least provisional the next business day for you. Provisional delays. So if they're in provisional, make sure that they have gone to get fingerprinted and you see that the FBI shows complete. Make sure that their fingerprints were not rejected. If they are, then you'll need to follow the rejection process. It could also be provisional because we're asking the applicant for additional information because of something that was on their FBI background. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have a disqualifying offense. It could be that we need a date. We may need a final disposition. We just may need some clarity. Maybe their child maltreatment has not been done, or you're waiting on out-of-state results. And then looking at our not approved list, you can see that until today, most of our errors were because of a notary stamp missing dates on the notary stamp, or not matching. So I hope that a lot of those errors will cease after today. Make sure though that your applicant is signing that consent form and dating it. And then if the applicant's name or date of birth is entered incorrectly, you'll get a not approval. If the wrong type of form is uploaded, you'll get a not approval. So if you upload like your Sam's Club order screenshot to the system instead of the consent, you'll get a not approval. So sometimes we see just random things that have been uploaded, and most of the time it's a mistake, and that's totally fine. If you get that not approval, reach out. It can be fixed. You can correct it, and we can upload a new form for you. So reach out to us. If you submit the applicant more than one time, we will not approve the duplicate entry. So just to get it out of the way, we'll kind of not approve it and then move on with the corrected one. And again, if they do not complete fingerprints or they do not complete the Arkansas child maltreatment within 45 days, they'll be moved to not approved. So if that happens, reach out to us if you're not for sure on what exactly is missing or what has caused a not approval. Any questions in a delay of process? Okay, so the last couple of slides is going to be important information. So these are some important phone numbers. And again, if your email's in the chat, I will make sure that you get this. The very first top number is going to be the main number, the main line where you can reach the background check unit. If you call that main number, one of the lovely ladies that answer the phone, they're going to get you to someone who's available here in our background check unit. If you do not get us immediately, leave us a voicemail. We will return your phone call. If we're not in the office, we'll make sure that somebody is returning a phone call for you. If you don't get a call back that same day, send an email. If that person's out of the office, you'll get a reply and you'll get another phone number to call. So there's also the INA subscription account. We talked about that earlier. Brenda put it in the chat. For all things password, payment help, contact the subscription account line. There is also the INA help desk number. So this number is for if you're having any type of errors in the system, maybe it's not letting you submit an applicant or some kind of technical error you can call them about. They won't be able to help you with like what determinations, statuses, knowing if someone's eligible, but they'll be able to help you if you're getting any type of error or it's not letting you put in someone's information. And then of course we have this central registry, and that is for your child maltreatment checks. Okay, and again, I will make sure that everyone gets a copy of this so that you have those numbers and you have all of the links. Are there any questions that we did not get to discuss, or maybe you have that we didn't talk about? We can kind of touch on any questions about any of the processes that maybe you're not sure or you want us to check into. Like I said, this is a small group, so if you have any like specific questions, we can help you. We'll take any questions. If not, that's really the end of the training for today. Hope that you were able to gain some information on the process of this background check system and how to get those. I know it can be a little daunting at times, but we are here to help. I know that Cindy has put her information in the chat box. My information is also in the chat box. See, Brenda Burr's got her information in the chat box. So you've got plenty of point of contacts there. If you have questions, you can always reach out to us. If you're not sure, please feel free to give us a call or send us an email. We want to help. So any questions? I'll give just a few minutes if anybody wants to put any questions in the chat box. This recording will be posted on our website. Whenever I send you this link, let me see here. I'll put the link in the chat box for everyone in case you want it. Give me 1 second here. Give you the training link so that if you want to share that information. Yes, about the notary. Yeah, so it recently happened. So when the law went into effect, we've been just trying to determine, what it means for us, how we can update our forms. And so we've been just trying to get the form right. We want to make some additional updates and make it even more simpler. We would like to do like an electronic signature. But for right now, it's going to help so much to not have to get it notarized. So okay, I put the link in the chat box. So if you want to have access to this meeting, the recording will be there. Give it a few days. You can access it there. It'll take you to a YouTube link where we upload those. And then if you have any other colleagues that need a copy, you can send them as well. We do these meetings quarterly. So, you know, if you want to join us for the next one, it will be, give you the date here, on July 27th. It'll be at the same time at 12. And the link I just put in the chat box, if you go there, you will find the option to join, and it has the different dates. So it has all of our training dates there. And no, so the notary is no longer required. On those consent forms, they do not have to get them notarized. Now, that is only for the criminal and federal background check forms. The child maltreatment, I believe they still have to get notarized until that gets changed. But for the criminal portion, they do not need to get it notarized. So the link has already been updated, and when they go there and they fill it out, they'll get those 2 pages back. It's already missing. They don't need to do anything further. It's an automatic update. Yes. And if any of the licensing team that's on the call, if you have providers that have questions, feel free to call us or send them to me, and we'll help them any way that we can. Okay. All right. Well, that's the end of today's training. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for everything that you do for children in Arkansas. And I hope that you all have a wonderful afternoon. Give us a call if you have any questions.